storytelling and conservation today. And just over some brief outline, first we're gonna learn about the panelists, learn who they are, and then we're gonna be having a Q&A session towards the end. And yeah, that's how it's gonna go. So do we have any questions before we start today? Yeah, so if there are no questions, we could go ahead and get started with the first question for our panelists.
Um, our first question is, could you guys briefly introduce yourselves and give us a little bit about your background and your role in the environment? And for the order, could we go with Taylor, Jasmine, and Eri?
Sure, that sounds good. So my name is Taylor Lahey. I am a graphic designer by trade, but this past year I started my own business. It's a studio, which is called Taylor Lahey Studio. And from there, I published a children's book called Combio, which means exchange in Portuguese. And finding that story through my last place of work changed a lot of my trajectory about what I believe I could do as a storyteller and a creative. What I found through years of being a graphic designer is that I like to take care of other creatives and I like to have a vision and move people towards them. So a lot of my work today is I try to partner with people that are making an impact, from local politicians to nonprofits or even small businesses that are aligned to my vision. And sometimes I just deliver a graphic design for them. It could be marketing, it could be a website. But if things go well and maybe they have a bigger budget or a bigger appetite to do something creative, I I team up with other creatives and we try to make something big. But day to day, on my own work, I am I'm trying to make Cambio real, and I actually just launched this thing called the Bike Exchange Program, which is happening this November in Santa Cruz, where people will be donating bikes and refurbishing them and giving them away to low-income housing residents. And it's happening all in one day because right now it's all separated. And this is just something that I have identified just over time and I just really want to have happen. And so I went from telling other people's stories to making things happen. Um, and so, yeah, graphic design and I guess community activations is what I'm up to.
Yeah, thank you.
Epic. Nice to meet you, Taylor, too. We chatted a little bit before this, but nice to meet you. Aloha, everybody. I'm just going to introduce myself in Olelo, Hawaii. It's like the native language of Hawaii. So aloha, ojazi ko inoa, nomoko kiawe mai ao. My name is Jasmine, but everybody just calls me Jazzy. I'm from the Big Island of Hawaii, but I currently reside on Oahu, which is like the island with the biggest city in Hawaii. So I started off as a photographer and writer originally, and I was able to get myself into the conservation work here in Hawaii. Again, where I'm from, where I've always wanted to come back to and be of service to the communities here. And I currently work for Sustainable Coastlines Hawaii. So it's a nonprofit, and our mission is to inspire communities to care for coastlines. And what we do is we focus a lot on marine debris and how plastic pollution affects coastal communities like here in Hawaii and around the world. So we're most known for large-scale cleanups, but a lot of what I capture now is the upstream work that we do with native plant restoration, land restoration, growing more food from home, focusing on our relearning program where we take ideas like native Hawaiian ideals and bring them into classrooms and take kids out into the field, to farms, to the beach and all that kind of stuff. So my role for the organization is I'm technically my job title is a senior storytelling coordinator. And what that means is I get to just capture the stories of the organization. This is something that I started doing first in college, and then I also got to get my start in conservation originally with the Coral Restoration Lab. Before I came to Sustainable Coastlines Hawaii, and now I'm focused a lot on plastic pollution and storytelling here. So yeah, nice to meet everybody.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Miguel. Thank you, Georgia, for hosting this. My name is Eri. I use she, her, ella pronouns. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Eri y ocupo el pronombre ella. My background in conservation, I'm a Spanish teacher and Japanese teacher, so it's foreign languages. And right now I work as a bilingual Spanish-English conservation educator for Point Blue Conservation Science. It's a long name, but specifically for the STRAW program, which stands for Students and Teachers Restoring a Watershed, based in Petaluma, California, north of San Francisco. And we do restorations in wetlands, riparian areas, meadows, in different counties along California. And as a bilingual conservation educator, we work closely with community-based restoration programs and how we can involve students from local schools to be more active and aware on how restoration projects can happen nearby, and just learn about what science is, and yeah, be close to science. Everybody's a scientist. So I'm very happy to be here and share with you my path.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for being here and taking time to present for us. So for our first question, what inspired you to pursue a career in environmental work, and was there a moment that sparked your passion? For order, we could start with Jasmine or Jazzy, then Eri, and then Taylor.
Cool. Yeah, it's a great question. So I actually, growing up here in Hawaii, I was really connected with land and with space and with the ocean. And so my passion actually for the environment started at a really young age. Because I think that we have a saying here, it's called pilina. So it's like caring for the land as it cares for you kind of thing. It's like the reciprocal nature of things. And that's something that I was brought up with, that idea of pilina, of reciprocity. So that's kind of what sparked going into college, and even just like coming from high school, going into college, me wanting to work around the ocean. I didn't know exactly what that path was until I got to college, and I went to Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo. And I majored in communications and environmental studies. So I was able to work with the things that I was passionate about, writing and photography. And I got to pair it with these really cool ideas that I learned from environmental comms and environmental studies. So it was super intentional, like where I was going, what I was doing. Um, and I really started my career at a club. It was at the Cal Poly Surfrider Club. Surfrider is also another nonprofit. They focus a lot on plastic pollution, policy and litigation, stuff like that. And they have chapters all over the US, chapters that are for community. Yeah, this is Surfrider. So this is what I got to do for Surfrider. I got to shoot photos for them, and I was like a media director. But the different chapters were all throughout the US. So I got to network with a lot of different people, and I got to use my passion of photography, obviously, here. And I got to pair it with writing, and I did all their socials in college. And that kind of snowballed into getting me into working for a lab. So I got to work then for this lab called the Mega Lab, the Multi-Scale Environmental Graphical Analysis Lab. It's a really big mouthful, but basically at the core of what they do is they do research on coral, and it's all for the community, to support subsistence and stuff like that, throughout Hawaii and also throughout the world. One of the first trips that they brought me on was actually to Tahiti, and I got to capture them in action with the coral gardeners. If any of you have heard of them, they're also a really great group that works on coral conservation and science. But we got to work with them. I got to capture them in action. And then it kind of led me into the job I have now. So this is kind of the work that we did with coral gardeners. What they're doing in the photos was photogrammetry. So it's just like they basically create 3D models out of photos that they take underwater. And this is just me taking photos of the crew while they work. But yeah, so coming from this field of work, it was very like in the water, action oriented. And then now I have my job with Sustainable Coastlines Hawaii, where I took a little bit of a step back from being in the water, and now I'm mostly on land and upstream. So we're still on the coastline. This is like a drone shot that I had from a cleanup that we did on a remote coastline. But the work is still the same. It's still capturing what we say mo'olelo in action. So that's like stories in action. And the story here is the story of community and trying to like reclaim the things that we have, like the things that we already have, instead of using like plastic and stuff like that, because plastic, it has such a huge negative impact on our coastlines here in Hawaii, and on the communities here. So I think, yeah, just going back to like the initial question is like, how did I even get into this, all of this work in the first place? It was just a passion for the environment and a respect for pilina, which is that idea of reciprocity. Yeah, this is my work with Sustainable Coastlines. So that's kind of what I do now is I go out and capture photos of our programs, and then I get to write about it and share it with the world on our socials and with our partners and sponsors and stuff.
Oh. Yeah. Thank you. Really awesome photos.
Thanks.
So if we could have, I believe Eri was next.
Thank you. Wow, beautiful pictures, Jasmine. It's so inspiring.
Thank you.
What inspired me to lead my career nowadays as a language teacher, I'm a new transplant in the US, so coming here and seeing the need to help other communities that don't have all the options or access to outdoor areas was something that shifted my job as a Spanish teacher at school to something that I wanted to do more actively. And conservation has always been in the back of my mind, but somehow growing up in Latin America and not having so much access to different career paths or clubs or things that you have here in the US, and not trusting myself really that I could pursue a scientific career was something that it was always there. And coming to the US and seeing the opportunity to have this job that I could be teaching, that I love, and also use Spanish, that this is the language that I feel more comfortable, and help conservation and restorations with local community was the perfect job. And that's how I got to this job. I saw it and I applied without having much experience as a conservation educator, but since then I'm very happy. And yeah, something new and go for it. That's what I did.
Yeah, sounds really inspiring. Thank you.
Cool. I'll wrap up with this question. I'll start by saying that I've always cared about the environment, and I felt really hopeless. And it was not until my last job that I was working with actually a cryptocurrency, one that was very radical, and believed that maybe one day we could back currency based on the quality of cleanliness of water, or how many, forests are healthy and pulling down carbon. And I started seeing opportunities in which I could see existing systems actually becoming of service to the planet. And we would tell the story where I would work about a real program where people would exchange trash for bus tokens. And over time, these bus tokens would allow people to go access the city, become, in ways in situations where they otherwise might not been able to. And over time, those bus tokens became a secondary currency. And what was really special is you could now, in this time and place, you could pick up trash and then be able to afford your basic means in your life. So therefore, money that would be created into existence by doing the right thing, taking care of the environment. And when I realized that I could tell stories like that, like I could do things, this story ended up being what would become my children's book. I realized that I could become an agent in my unique way of participating in the world through visual storytelling, through combination of words and illustrations, and pairing images with typography. It really started framing that, like, what I do isn't just a service to a company. It's also a product or a creation within itself that that could really I'd like to think make a difference. So it was through just learning about that story, this particular place and time in Brazil in the 70s, that that really inspired me, that like, well, maybe like I can do stuff locally. Maybe I could do this in my own community. And maybe as someone that, creates stories, I could perhaps, allow people I could create stories that people want to participate in, people want to come into. And what's really fascinating about my background in graphic design is that it just organizes things. And if you invite people to things that are organized and they have clear roles, all of a sudden people are like, I would love to do this. So my path is like all started with the story that just opened up a lot of possibilities of thinking for myself.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really interesting take on economy. So yeah, that sounds awesome.
Thank you for for the inspiration about community, how community inspired everyone. Now on to the next question. What challenges did you face starting your career, and how did you overcome them? And for the order, could we go with Eri, Taylor, and Jasmine?
Yeah, wow, challenges. This is hard, and I think the first one that comes to my mind is my own fears, like not believing that I'm capable of doing, and all those fears, like, oh, I don't know if I'm qualified, I don't know if I can do this, and really identify all those fears, even though as an adult I still have those fears. And yeah, and just quiet down that voice in my head and saying, I don't think so. I think I have to try it out and see, and just overcoming those fears and trying out and study, just believing in the curiosity that I have. I don't know everything. I don't have all the answers for everything. And every time that I start a new position or a new job or a new journey, there's always going to be things new. And I have to remind myself to embrace those new things without much fear and confident that I'm capable. And if I don't know, it's okay. And that really helped me to ask for help. And every time that I felt lost, ask for help around me and not feel ashamed for not knowing something. And I think that was one of the biggest challenges that I still encounter, and I have to be mindful of that. It's like, okay, stop and let's think about it. And yes, how can I overcome this fear? And yeah, I feel every time more confident. And reaching out to people, you're always going to find somebody who's going to guide you, a mentor. I have so many mentors. They have given me different advices and connect me with people that maybe they don't know, but they know that these people can help me. And I have so much gratitude for all the people that have reached out to me and helped me on my journey. And now I have that responsibility to help other people and be mentored too, and help that path. Is like seeing those people that were once me and how I can give back those hands.
Yeah, thank you.
So I could approach this a few different ways, and maybe I will approach the answer a few different ways. I would say the beginning, first off, on the side of graphic design, and I think this would be the same for writing. This would be perhaps the same for photography. It's a practice. And when I was coming out of college, it was really important that I had a portfolio of work that I really cared about, that I was going to keep pursuing this ability to visually communicate, to create things that work for myself, but work for others, and constantly learn and get better at my craft. In many ways, it's not just a practice, it's also a craft. And so it means creating a point of view and making a lot of work from that point of view. I want to echo definitely the mentorship piece. As a storyteller, it's so interesting to be able to have to be connected to a lot of different people and to perhaps speak on their behalf, and doing that with respect and dignity it takes practice. And in a professional setting, it's important to have people you could just ask questions to, and kind of whiteboard or brainstorm ways that you could do that in a good way. And then I think, let's see, the last thing would be of taking on new work. And that's always difficult, of like wanting to stretch yourself into something that's beyond like what you're currently doing. And that's how, in my line of work, that's how I got to grow. It wasn't like necessarily managing others. It was, taking on a bigger project. And I think mentorship also really helps with that. Seeing how other people have done it, figuring out what the experience is going to be like, setting good expectations, not volunteering something that you're not able to deliver on. So those were definitely things that I struggled against until I just got some good practice on against. I've practiced doing them.
Yeah, those were all so epic. I will say, like, the practice thing, I'm still I'm still in that phase of like practicing my craft and like tweaking it, because at least for me, that's something that I'm always changing with my style of photography, how I write and how I communicate like stories and stuff like that. So those are cool to do. Some challenges that I faced initially, one of them was just getting my work in front of people. I think that oftentimes, like, um at least for me, when I was first starting out with like photography and writing and stuff like that and trying to get my work in front of people, feeling like I'm inundating people's inboxes or like excuse me, like their phones and stuff like that with my work and like being too much or whatever. I think that was like a big fear of mine. But really, like, if you don't put your work out there, like, it's never going to be seen. So that was something, a big challenge of mine, was like just learning how to be confident in myself and my ability, and know that like I am a good photographer. I can shoot very well. I can communicate these stories really well, and people should see that because it's something that I'm passionate about. Just like other people have passions too, right? Yeah, that was something that was really hard for me, was just getting the confidence to even put my work in front of people. Um, and another thing, a challenge too, is just saying, like, when to say yes and when to say no. I think when you're first starting out, you want to say yes to every opportunity, but not every opportunity necessarily will like benefit you, or at least like benefit you in the field of work that you want to go into. Because I know, for me, I started off doing like photo editing and stuff for orgs that had nothing to do, like, it didn't align at all with what I wanted. And I don't even put it in my portfolio. So I think that was a lesson learned for me, was just like trying to navigate, what should I say yes to, what should I say no to, what is going to benefit me for what I want out of my career, and like, how do I get to like what I want? How do I get to my North Star, I think. And I guess that's my last point, is trying to figure out for me what that North Star is, like what you're reaching towards, what your goal is with the work that you're doing, because there's so much work in conservation that needs to be done that is super important. And that they're like, you can be passionate about so many different things in conservation. And so yeah, I guess like trying to find that North Star and narrow it down with the help of mentorship, with the help of asking questions and not being afraid to ask those questions, with the help of practice, like Taylor said. And yeah, so those are my, my 2 cents on challenges and overcoming them.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Really great, excuse me, really great ways to like overcome challenges. Like, I really think that like gaining that confidence, putting yourself out there, practicing what you do, and also to overcoming your fears are really great ways. So thank you. For our next question, How can storytelling be used as a tool to engage communities in conservation efforts? And how can we ensure that these narratives are inclusive and amplify diverse voices? Um, this is a long one, so yeah, I'll give you time to think, but the order will be Taylor, Jasmine, and Eri.
Wow. This is the question I'm engaging with right now. As I mentioned, I'm building this bike exchange program, and it's the first time I've like totally like took a vision and started making it happen, like really manifesting it. Um and the biggest thing I've learned is that when doing something like putting on an event, or I guess even creating a business, but I'll just use the event as this like storytelling like container, is that I have to be responsible for everyone involved. Like, and if I could think of it as a story rather than like all these roles and all the things that could go wrong or could go right, or the goals I'm trying to hit, instead of just thinking like what is the most ideal story I want to tell, it becomes easier. I believe that everyone wants to be a part of a good story. And I think it's up to local community members, local leaders, to make them like to invite people into that story. So as I'm building this thing, I'm just trying to think of like every person that is involved needs to make this thing more whole. And I'm responsible from getting us to the beginning and to the end. And through that, I have to think about pain points or things that need to happen, things that would be good to have to support everyone. And those are just hard, and asking for help is hard, and making sure you have everything you need is hard. But being able to share a vision allows people to enter the thing that you're making, the community that you want to create. And so, yeah, I want to say that my bike exchange is not exactly a conservation effort, well, not a direct conservation effort, but I think it has to do with how to build anything and then give that a purpose, perhaps conservation, and making sure that everyone involved has a good experience and they just want to do it again and again and again.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's epic. Yeah, I love what you just said about everyone wants to be part of a good story, because that's so true, right? In the conservation work that I do with plastic pollution here in Hawaii, we say that our mission is to inspire communities here in Hawaii and also around the world. And how do we engage people in those conservation efforts is we just share about it on platforms where it can be accessible for anyone really. And we try to make sure that information is easy to access and also easy to understand. But yeah, I mean, you can look up my organization on social media and stuff like that, but a lot of times what we do is we put stuff out on social media. We put out content that, where people can have conversations in the comments, and like nobody is restrained to what they can or can't say. I think is a really cool way of having like social platforms, especially as a nonprofit. And a couple things is like making sure that these narratives are inclusive and amplify these diverse voices is calling people in instead of calling them out. I like to say that a lot, because oftentimes you don't want to hear or listen to or even share an opposite point of view than your own. In plastic pollution, it's really funny because we actually have a lot of people that don't believe in it. They don't think it's a thing. They don't think climate issues are real and stuff like that. But it's always interesting to hear what they have to say. And it's also really important in listening to that so that you can kind of like take your own ideas and feel really solidified in them. So yeah, acknowledgement, calling people in instead of calling them out is something that's really important. And something that we have, at least at Sustainable Coastlines, is we have this keiki to kupuna mindset type thing. And this is how I share information a lot of the times is keiki means kids, kupuna is like elders, so like older people. So keiki to kupuna, this is from like you're a baby until you're older and stuff like that, and you're an elder. information is for you and about you, therefore you should have a voice in it. And so a lot of times we actually take input from students, we take input from local community members. We go to community board meetings that they have, like neighborhood board meetings here in Hawaii, and we ask for their input. We also share what we're up to as an organization, so that people can say, oh, maybe you shouldn't be conducting this particular event in this space because X, Y, and Z. Because here in Hawaii, there's also like a lot of different cultural protocols that we adhere to. So we want to make sure that we're mindful and respectful of space. So yeah, just like having that keiki to kapuna mindset and calling people in instead of calling them out, I think is really important. Because oftentimes too, I found that it's, especially like for me as like a woman of color, and it can be really difficult to even get a seat at the so-called table. Like there's this imaginary table that not everyone has a seat at, but everyone should, you know. If you're at the table and you're lucky to be there and share your voice and your opinions, invite somebody else in too, so that they can also have the experience of sharing their insight into something. I think that's always nice. It's like bring a buddy with you to the table so that everyone's voice can be heard.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's awesome.
Yeah. For me, storytelling is such a powerful gift. I'm a very shy person, and it takes me a lot of time to open up and share my stories. And also, when you share stories, you're also opening that door to listen stories. So that reciprocity needs to be present to everybody, to hear other people's stories. As you were saying, Jasmine, maybe you don't agree with other opinions or other point of views, but respectfully, and also how comfortable you feel about sharing. We all have stories, and sometimes they're not very pretty, but how we feel comfortable about our own stories and how we feel comfortable in our own skins, and we are proud of where we come from. I wish I had more time to ask my abuela, my grandma, more stories about her when she was little, and learn more about her and other people, and have more perspective. But now I feel like I would like to also hear from other people. Maybe it's not my direct abuela or my direct abuelo, but my tias or my tios, my uncles and aunts, but other uncles and aunts, and also learn about them and how I can pass those to other people too. So if you have that chance to and confidence to listen to other people's story, I invite you to go and see if you can also share your stories. And little by little, you will feel more confident finding your own story, your own voice, and then sharing that voice. And the more that you tell your story, the more confident you feel, and that story becomes more strong and real. And then it's not a story just in the past, it's the story that you want to see in the future. So that story has so much power, knowing the past, the present, and where you want to lead. And I think that's when storytelling comes to my mind. Is such a powerful gift that we all practice.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. It's inspiring hearing how storytelling has helped everyone develop and become who you are. For our fourth question, we would ask, what advice would you give to people who are interested in similar paths as yours? And for the order, could we go with Jasmine, Taylor, and Eri?
Yeah. Advice to people with a similar path. I would say put yourself in a position to learn. I think that, I mean, like, I feel like looking at the Zoom here, a lot of people are, a lot of you look like you're more like high school, college age, I think. But yeah, so I think just putting yourself in a position to learn and keeping your mind open to opportunities. I think that if I would have stayed exactly on the path that I started with initially in college, like freshman year college kind of thing, I would not be where I am today. If I had kept my mind closed to opportunities that I didn't think were possible for me, I would not be here where I am today. So I think, yeah, just keeping your mind open to different things and always coming at something new or something different, or maybe even something uncomfortable with I'm here to learn attitude is really important. And just be a sponge. I like to say that a lot because for me, I do like to talk, but I also I started my career with just a lot of listening. And just being a sponge where if you have someone who's a mentor and they're giving you your time or giving you their time, take advantage of that moment because one, time is the most expensive thing you have. It's the one thing you can never get back. You and also the people around you. So just like be a sponge of information, soak it up and listen, and apply it, even if you fail. I think that's something that's kind of scary, right? Is like, what if I get all this information and I can't actually execute? It doesn't matter if you fail or if you succeed. The fact is that you have the confidence and like you take your chance at executing something. I think that's really important. But yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very inspiring. That's fine.
There's so many good insights in there, Jasmine. Thank you. I'll say for what I do, I end up doing this process where I have my alone time and something sparks my interest. And I want to figure out why I love it. And I learn about it, nerd out about it, I apply it, I make something, and I show the world. And that's been the true cycle. That's been true for everything I've done from graphic design to making videos to, making a book. There's just this work phase, incubation phase, if you want to call it that, and then this presentation and being unafraid to just keep going in that cycle, you're going to be able to tell any story with more and more confidence over time. And I think of it like as in like the pursuit of clarity of like what I love. And that's pretty much sums up what I do throughout my whole life is I just want things to get clearer and clearer, and I want what I say and who I work with and what stories I tell for them or for myself to be as clear as possible. So I would just recommend that, like, get really comfortable making things, expressing yourself, sharing them, and be ready for feedback, and be just constantly making and thinking and talking and interfacing with the world.
Yeah, thank you.
Great advices, Jasmine and Taylor. I wish I had you when I was 14, 15. Advices for others. I will say try new things. Don't be afraid to try new things. Be curious and learn. I try to do this, learn every day something new. Before I go to bed, it's like, why did I learn today? It can be a word, a new word in English or in another language, but just something very simple. But I try to think and go to the process. What did I learn today? I don't know. It just makes me happy to think about that. And then, yeah, don't be too harsh with you if things didn't go the way that you wanted to go. I call them learning mistakes. I learn from my own mistakes. I try to say, okay, what could I have done better next time? Or how can I learn from that mistake that somebody else made? Oops. Yeah, I learn and I try to see my learning experiences from that and how can I be better next time. And yeah, be gentle and kind to yourself. Like we are so harsh to ourselves, like, oh my gosh, this didn't work. And no, it's didn't work this time, but next time I'm gonna be better. I'm gonna see how I can be better. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all really good advice from all of you. And I think that, like kind of like everyone kind of said, like prioritizing yourself is kind of what I got from all three of you. Like it's really, really good advice that you give to everyone. So thank you. So just because of time, we're gonna have to skip our last question, unfortunately, and just open it up to Q&A. So if anyone who has any questions at all, just can, you can type in chat and we can read them off for you. And yeah. So our first question we got, if anyone would like to answer, what were some roadblocks that your career had? Yeah, it could be anyone.
Hmm. I'll answer this one. I think my biggest roadblock was when I realized that I really couldn't compromise on who I'd work with anymore, and it meant like trying to make the world a better place. Um, it it just takes way more effort. It makes way more effort to approach the right people, and it starts off feeling difficult. And over time, you realize that you will find the people um, that want to also make the world a better place. But at the very beginning, it was so difficult to decide to like start my own business and take on my own clients, and it's it's just I'm believing in myself and believing this is a better path. And at first, it just felt really lonely. So over time, things eventually worked out, and I'm really happy they did. But that was definitely a roadblock.
Yeah, definitely. I think, especially in any work, it can get lonely. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I was wondering if Ari and Jasmine, if you wanted to add on to that or anything you wanted to say.
Yeah. Mine was more of like the roadblock that I had was more of like something happening in my personal life that affected the work that I was able to do in my professional life. So I had a very, very difficult time with housing and stuff like that when I was first starting out. It's super expensive to live here in Hawaii. It's even more expensive to just buy groceries and stuff like that. So I was at one point almost had to sleep in my car. At one point was like getting like having to stay at like friends' houses and stuff like that. Um, and I bring this up because I think a lot of people have this vision that like, oh, you like live in Hawaii and you do all this really cool work and like the photos, everything's great. But that was something that really impacted the quality of work that I could deliver too. So always like it's a good reminder to like really take care of yourself and get yourself settled before you can even give your time away to other people in that way. And I wish that I had given more time to myself when I was first starting out instead of being like, oh, I'll just suffer for a little bit so that I could get this stuff done. Um, I wish I'd done the opposite. So that was like something that kind of put a stop to the work that I was doing for a little bit. But obviously, yeah, back on my feet now. So yeah, that's something that I would prioritize is try to help yourself before you can help other people.
Yeah, I think it's really important to always learn how to love yourself first and then, learn how to love other things.
Yeah, as Jasmine and Taylor mentioned, there will be some hard times, but seeing beyond the big block, it's what really help me. Like not just seeing it in front of me all the time, but trying to see that this is just a moment, maybe a long moment, but it's not gonna define me or it's not gonna be forever. And how I can ask for help. I think that's something that I really had to work my pride. I was very independent and I love to be independent, not to ask for help, and reaching out to people that I never thought that could get help from. It really opened up and made me very humble. Like everybody had a hard time or many hard times. So asking for help is nothing to be ashamed, and saying, I'm struggling right now with this. This is really hard for me. How can I go over, or what can I do? It's everybody. I can say that everybody in the world have had a hard time many times. So don't feel ashamed about when you encounter those moments, and you're not alone. Many people have the same feelings, and it's just one time or one moment or a long time, but it's not forever. That's it.
Yeah, that's also really important to ask for help. So thank you.
Um, so we have another question in the chat. It is, what helped to start this career? Were there any people or resources that supported you? And anyone could tackle it.
Can answer the one in the chat if that helps people think about the other one. What mistakes did you make mistakes in your career and turn out into positive outcome? Yes, I made a lot of learning mistakes. I don't call them mistakes, learning opportunities. And they, yes, turn out positively, because it makes me really humble. If I make like a big oopsie, it was like, oops, yeah, it hurts, but I'm learning from this, and I'm not perfect, and I'm kind to myself, and I say sorry to the person or the people that I hurt, and very, very humbling experience, but it's also part of my growth. Yes. So now I can move on. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to just add on to that. I've had times where I was unprofessional, and they happen in everyone's career, but each of them are opportunities to take ownership of what you did. I mean, it could be harm, it could be disrespectful, but there's something about doing it in the workplace and really feeling what happened really allows for growth. And I think there's something about that in all of life, but that's definitely still applicable to professionalism, to a workplace, and it really starts growing a positive reputation and an integrity within the work you do if you're able to do stuff like that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. To piggyback off of that, the mistake question was, I think earlier I talked about like saying yes and saying no, is saying yes to the not wrong, but not the most right opportunities. And like, or saying no to the ones that could have been a lot better. And this kind of ties into the question of like biggest piece of advice is don't burn a bridge. The conservation community can feel very big and also very small. Here in Hawaii, particularly, it's very small, so like everybody. I think it's really important to continue building bridges, even if maybe like it's not a bridge with a person that you really like care to work with. And thinking about the work that's being done instead of the people you're doing it with, I think is really important, because sometimes like you're not going to get along with everybody, especially like in work that can feel very opinionated and stuff like that a lot of the time. But like prioritize the work, not the people. Sometimes it's like a case by case basis, but yeah, don't burn a bridge and do that. And someone that actually helped me a lot in my career was I got to meet a mentor, or not really a mentor, but like my hero in photography. I know a lot of people say don't meet your heroes, but I got to meet one of mine. He's so cool. He's a photographer on the Central Coast, and he kind of like was telling me about that and like how he started off super young in his career of photography, and he just kept building bridges, even if it didn't necessarily like expand or anything like that. He just like kept building relationships with people, and his relationships with people turned into other relationships with different people, which is really cool. And that's how networking works, right? So yeah, that helped me a lot in my career.
Yeah, thank you so much, really. So we got another question. We got a couple more, but so our next one is what is a piece of advice that stuck with you? We can have anyone answer, honestly. Yeah.
I'll go. This is quick. In creative work, you have to love your work first. Like you have to be the most courageous person to say like, I love this and it's for you. And it just takes so much heart energy, but it's the right. It's true. When you look at images that are well placed or pieces of art that are really well done, they always loved it first, and that is it's a lot. It's a lot to do. But yeah, I could imagine this being applied to anything that you own as a business person, anything in conservation, in creative or not. Like you just have to be daring enough to love the thing first before sharing it with the world.
Yeah, definitely.
I can piggyback on that. Just find the things that you like to do, enjoy the things that you enjoy to do, and then you discover your passion. And then if you get paid for doing the things that you enjoy doing, that's a win-win. So find your passions and find the things that you enjoy.
To wrap this question up, something that a previous manager had told me before was there's always going to be more work to do. So, if you feel like, oh, I didn't get the sensei or like I wasn't able to accomplish this or whatever, this can apply to really anything. But there's always going to be more work to do, like in the environmental field and stuff like that, in conservation work especially. So like don't be too hard on yourself and just start again fresh tomorrow.
Yeah, no, thank you. Really good pieces of advice.
Thank you. So we have another question on the chat. It's, did you ever feel like giving up? And if you did, how did you deal with that? And anyone could answer the question.
Yes. In short, yes. Um, it can sometimes be really difficult working in conservation. For me in particular, I had a moment that is gonna stick with me for forever. Um, I worked for someone who wasn't supportive of my goals, but I was working for them so that I could get experience and stuff like that. And yeah, it made me feel like I wanted to give up because of the lack of support, the lack of encouragement and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's like it's you who has to encourage yourself, because if not you, then who, right? I know a lot of people say that, but I think making sure that you believe in yourself first before you rely on someone else to give you that support can change a lot in your career. Um, and also just making sure that, you know, again, it's okay if something doesn't work out, but just keep moving forward, because there's this thing called the power of yet, right? Like maybe you didn't finish something, like, oh, I didn't get, I don't know, I didn't get to this milestone. Well, not yet, right? Like the power of yet is really important in the work that we do, um, to keep pushing yourself forward, especially when you have setbacks and stuff like that in your career.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, if anyone would like to add on, and if not, we could get the next one. So yeah, Taylor, my bad.
Well, no, with 3 minutes,
just real quick.
You like to end on something lighter?
Yeah. So just I don't know, real quick, just for time, just for your answers. So how do you think as an individual help make a long-term impact on the environment?
Hmm.
I will say quick, step by step gets us there.
At some point in my life, after, I'm 36 years old, at some point I realized like I'm building a garden. Like I just stopped competing and I realized I'm just trying to be able to integrate the things I've learned in life and create a nice surrounding. And if I could do that with the people I live with, we try to be a good neighbor, take care of like the land I live on as best I can, help out when I can, and build like make things with purpose, to express things with purpose. I just believe like I'm just going to keep going, and I'm not gonna. It's going to be hopefully sustainable. I want it to be sustainable. That's where I'm aimed at. And I think if I could just create proof in my own life, that will help. So that's all I'm after for start.
Would you like to add anything on, Jazzy?
Yeah, I guess to end it, I would say to make a long-term impact on the environment as an individual, invite people to join in on all the fun that you're having while doing it. I think that's something that we share a lot with my organization is like we just show how much fun we're having protecting our coastlines and giving back to the community around us. And I think that again, back to what Taylor said earlier, everybody wants to be part of a good story. So make it fun, make it exciting, and invite people to join in on all the fun.
Yeah. So yeah, it's super great questions to end it on. Thank you all for your amazing responses. So yeah, that does conclude our time with our panelists. So yeah, thank you so much for your time and thank you for all your thoughtful responses and for answering our questions. So yeah, just heads up, next week we'll be doing this again, our final session for Green Careers. So yeah, same time next week, 5:30 to 6:30. And yeah, thank you so much again to our speakers, Jasmine, Taylor, and Eri. Thank you so much. Really, really great to have you.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you. Have a nice night.